Hi buddy, Michael here. Today's video I'm going to be explaining the death of the Reform Party on the 12th of January 2026. Let's go. Okay, so in British politics, a lot of people have come to the realization that reform are not the answer to our problems. The Tories, Labour and the Uni Party, everybody's realised they're useless and they're not going to solve our problems. And people have been looking to reform as an answer. Myself, I joined reform probably just over a year ago. And this was when they had Farage, they had Habib, they had Rupert Lowe, and I was really optimistic about what they could do. But when they got rid of Rupert Lowe, when they got rid of Habib, when they brought in Zia Yusuf, and now the new Muslim mayor they want to get into power, with time, more and more people are turning away from reform and realising that they are not the answer, and that Nigel Farage is doing this for his own ego rather than for his country. And whilst at the beginning, some people would argue, no, reform is still the answer, they're the better alternative. But I think as time goes on, more people are starting to realise, no, this is not good. And yesterday was the ultimate death blow because we saw Nadhim Zahawi go over to reform. And they could not have picked a worse appointment, really. And there's 6 reasons why. This is not just an ex-Tory, there's many reasons. So the number one reason, he's an ex-Tory. People are sick of the Tories, and with reform bringing in so many Tories, they're basically Tory 2.0, and people don't want Tory 2.0, they want a genuine reform. Okay, number 2, it's another foreign person. One of the biggest problem English people have is we're losing our identity, and we don't feel like we've barely got any English politicians, and the last thing we want is another non-English person in government. Not because we hate foreigners, but because we're England and we want to be run by the English. For the most part, with a few exceptions. Number 3, it's yet another Muslim. I don't know. One of the biggest concerns British people have is the rise of Islam. And reform, rather than going to the British people's will, they're trying to appease everybody. So now they're trying to bring in Muslims. Even Farage says we can't alienate the Muslims. Well, we don't want to become a Muslim country. We want to be a country that follows Christ, follows the Logos. And they've got enough Muslims in the party. Zia Yusuf, the new mayor of London or candidate for mayor of London. Now we got Zahawi. We don't want to be run by Muslims. Even though, in fairness, when you hear Zia Yusuf and the mayoral candidates speak, they speak well and they speak a lot of sense. But we cannot trust Islam. And we don't want to be run by Muslims. Number 4, he's another migrant apologist, and he comes out with all these things that basically insult the English. I think he's said things like, oh, well, foreigners bring more GDP to the country. But we're not interested in that anymore. We want people to focus on the will of the English people. And I personally don't have a problem with migrants as long as they're on our side. Any migrants who are trying to subvert the English and go on about, oh, migrants are fantastic, we wouldn't survive without them, diversity built Britain, all this rubbish, then they're the enemy. We have a lot of good migrants, such as I said, Momus Najmi, Lubna Candid, who's been speaking out for the English. So they are our allies. It's not about disliking foreigners or migrants, not at all. It's about there's migrants who support the English and they understand England for the English and they're happy to be here as foreigners. That's fine, we're happy with that. But what we don't like is ones who take the mick and try to, like the Muslims, try and take over and turn our country into a Muslim country, or try to insult the English by saying that you'd be nothing without us migrants. When we realise that people who have been English and lived here all their lives and generations understand that generally our country's got worse with more migration. And number 5, this is the guy who promoted, and he was the vaccine pusher. And he was the one doing all the vaccine mandates. One of the greatest crimes against the English people in history. So just goes to show his character. He's weak and pathetic. He's an NPC. He doesn't have the power and wisdom to do what's needed to be done. And he'll take our freedoms away rather than give us freedom. And finally, number 6, he's just another corrupt politician because he was fired from the Tories for having dodgy taxes. So again, another thing we're fed up with is all the corruption in government. We want noble people in government, such as Rupert Lowe, who has the British people's interests at heart, and they're not in it for the money. You know, Rupert Lowe is donating his wages to charities that are going to benefit the English people. That shows character. That shows somebody who loves the English people. And again, he has moral character. He's not a corrupt phony like most of our politicians. So that's the 6 reasons. And an interesting thing, I think most reform loyalists are even starting to get fed up. There's a YouTuber I follow. I always try to be balanced. So I follow a YouTuber who's a reform complete loyalist. He's called Harian Glaedov. I don't know if you've heard of him, but he's obsessed with reform and he never criticizes them. And even he released a video today saying, oh, God, it's not really great. And he can't really defend the appointment. So even when this guy is basically criticizing it, you know that they've royally screwed up. And I think yesterday was the death of reform. And I think people are completely awake now. And I personally think reform will slowly die. And as they lose popularity, Farage will do what he always does. And he'll abandon ship and they'll collapse. And my message of this video is, ultimately, I don't think there's a political solution that we've got a chance of getting in power. I mean, a problem with people with reform, they think, no, we just need to get in power and win. But the point is not to win. The point is to save our country or to make our country better. And the only people who I could see who would do that are Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe. Those two coming together and maybe including real good Tories who actually are against the system, such as maybe someone like a Dominic Cummings. Or even better, people completely outside of politics, such as people like a Rupert Lowe. And I also think it's very important that politically things are so messed up that there's not much hope. We should still try and do our best, but ultimately, I've always said, our only hope really lies in the spirit, or our main hope lies in the spirit. And it's the main function of reality. And Julius Evola talks about this, about how ultimately the transcendent is how we solve our problems rather than politically. And the reason I've started this channel, The Work of the Logos, and I have another personal channel, The Way of the Logos, is to encourage people to follow the spiritual path, follow the traditional way. You have our way of politics that's been done, communism, capitalism, nationalism, all this stuff. But the way to solve our problems politically is through traditionalism. But the first thing you must do is achieve the transcendent as individuals, and then have a political movement led by those who have achieved the transcendent. And that is how you do the traditionalist path. It's not a LARP, it's not cosplaying, it's Imperium led by spiritual leaders, true spiritual leaders, not religious leaders. That's a load of phony stuff as well, but spiritual leaders. We don't want to follow the Church of England. They're blind fools. We want to follow people who reach the transcendent, such as a Christ or a Buddha or a Marcus Aurelius type figure. And if you're interested in that, stay tuned, because I'm going to drop a video on nationalism, maybe even after this video or tomorrow. And that will go into detail the problems with nationalism and Julius Evola's thoughts on traditionalism, or the alternative to nationalism. Okay, so if you like what I'm talking about, like the video, please share it with as many people as you can to tell them to forget reform. Let's focus on spiritual values and the way of the Logos, the work of the Logos. And that's how we solve our problems. Share it with as many people as you can. Subscribe if you're new. And God bless everybody today. Goodbye.